Hello and welcome back aboard Narrowboat Gentian, where it is Saturday morning. I'm about to have breakfast. I'm up, dressed, washed, clean, ready for the day, and it is a gorgeous day. Sunshine, a little bit of cloud, possibly the odd spattering of rain, but basically nice. And my plan for this weekend is to do a longer trip, the first overnight trip on the boat. So I'm going to go out of the marina, turn right, and go, I think it's about 7 miles up to Torksey, where there is a lock out onto the River Trent. I will not be going through the lock today. I'm simply going to go up to Torksey, hopefully moor there overnight, and then come back tomorrow. So this is my first overnight trip in the boat, in the sense of actually going somewhere in it, staying overnight, and coming back. And again, this is all part of just testing it out, having purchased the boat not so long ago, checking that it is happy to do a slightly longer trip. And after that, the next trip will be to take it out onto the Trent and start gently bringing it back down towards the Midlands, which I will do over the course of several weekends over the summer. Anyway, first things first, and that is breakfast. Cornflakes with, I admit, a handful of Frosties thrown in for a bit of sweetness, and the inevitable cup of tea. Before I set off, you will notice I have once again plugged in to the shore mains, despite my reservations about the galvanic isolator, and that is because I have made a purchase. If we follow the line... Ooh, what's that big yellow thing? It is an isolation transformer, which is to say a device that completely isolates not just the live and neutral but the Earth, so it is a marine isolation transformer. I'll try and say that again, a marine isolation transformer, because you can get these for building sites that the Earth is common, which would be useless on a boat. You want the Earth to be split from the shore. Anyway, it's an IP67 box, so this thing is completely fully waterproof. Well, you know, IP67. It weighs a ton. It's 21 kilograms. Yes, I realise that's not a ton, but you know what I mean. It's very heavy. It's got an MCB here, and you have to unscrew that. It's all watertight, you see, and there's a circuit breaker under there. And you plug the shoreline in. Well, the shoreline is actually a part of the kit. This 10 metres of cable comes with it, goes in there, goes around one transformer winding, induces a current in the other transformer winding, and comes out there, which then plugs into my cable going to the back of the boat, where I plug it into the boat. And the Earth, as I say, is completely separate, so you don't have any worries about galvanic corrosion on the boat. This is a model BT3240 with a rating of 3.6 kVA from Airlink Transformers, who were very helpful. Actually sent them a couple of email questions. They were very good about getting back to me. And that can just sit here in wind and rain and everything and isolate my boat from the mains. Now you might well be thinking, hang on David, weren't you going to buy the Mastervolt Mass 3.5 GI unit? Yes, however, it's quite expensive. I think it's about 850 quid, which is not to say that other one was cheap. It was 600 quid. It seems that proper isolation transformers are not cheap. And yes, I know there were people saying, oh, you can buy one from Screwfix for 110 quid. It doesn't do the same job. Those are the ones with the common earths. You want the earth separate. You want it to be IP67. That one's got a MCB on it as well. By the time, if you look around and Google and find the one that does the job, honestly, they're all about 500 quid. To be fair, they did a cheaper one for, I think it was about £220, but it was only 1.6 kVA, which meant that I could run either the heater or the battery charger, but not both necessarily. If I want to run things on the boat up to the limit of the shoreline, I needed the 3.6 one, which was expensive. Anyway, one other reason for not getting it is simply a case of installation. You see, the obvious place to put an isolation transformer is here, where the electrics all come in the cupboard at the start. You've got the battery charger there. But where are you going to put it? Because if it goes here... Firstly, the Victron one is 21 kgs. I don't fancy hanging that off this wall. The Mastervolt unit would go here, but then it would get in the way of the transformer. And it can't go over this side because you've got the fire extinguisher and the ducting. And you can't put the one here down here because then it would get in the way of this lift to get to the heater unit. Basically, there's nowhere in this cupboard to actually put it that wouldn't be inconvenient. And I want to put a solar charge controller in here as well, which is probably going to go up here. So there's just nowhere to put a fully installed unit. Plus, and I imagine electrically qualified people may have something to say about this, the thing that concerns me about a unit that you install into the boat is that effectively the shoreline side of the mains persists all the way through the cable to the shoreline, through the boat, until you get to the isolation transformer. So if there was an earth fault or a crack in the cable up to the isolation transformer, that could touch your hull and be connecting your hull to the shore earth, which is what you don't want. Whereas that unit puts the break between shore earth and boat earth about as close to the pontoon as it's physically able to go, therefore meaning that everything on the boat is on the isolated earth. Now, to my mind, that makes sense. I think it makes physical sense, in the sense of the closer you have the break point to the shore pontoon, the better. So that is why I like that unit. Anyway, I've bought it now, and it seems to be working fine. I've had it running all night. The heater was running, the charger's running, all good. Anyway, let's get on with some boating. And with that, I fired up the Yanmar diesel and guided the boat off its pontoon and towards the marina exit. The flag suggested a windy day. It will be interesting to see how that affected a lightweight, shallow-drafted aluminium boat. It is 20 to 12. I've remembered to bring a hat this time. Let's see how long it takes to get to Torksey. First, I needed to warn off approaching craft. My boat's mighty bark should do that with ease. Being about 8 miles or so to the destination, it should take roughly 2.5 hours. Was there anyone coming? No, the way was clear, so I swung out, heading west. I hadn't realised there were moorings outside the pub alongside the marina, but it seems like a good idea. There are many pipe bridges across the canals. This one seems rather elaborate. A lone swan swanned up, hopeful for food, of course. As you head towards the village of Saxelby, a busy road runs alongside the canal, shattering the peace and tranquility. I assume that's some kind of feeder to the canal, but I honestly don't know. On the outskirts of Saxelby are a few industrial buildings. You remember how I ran out of propane on my first night on the boat? They have no such concerns here for sure. My newly purchased Nicholson's Guide showed that I was almost at the village where I would find boaters' facilities. Meanwhile, the sign suggested it's 10 kilometres to Torksey, where the Fosdyke navigation, which I was on, meets the River Trent. Or, in proper terms, that's 6.2 miles. Ah, there's the village. Twinned with where? Oh, yes, of course. Haarlemmerliede in Spanwool. This appears to be a typo, as Google insists the place is Spanwood, not wool. That's rather embarrassing. Poor form, Saxelby. That was a quick kilometre. Such is the magic of video editing. According to the Nicholson's Guide, there are moorings as you come into Saxelby. Just before this bridge, I think, although I see no sign of them. I'm not going to take advantage of those today, but I might pause on the way back tomorrow. It was delightfully quiet on the moorings here. Plenty of space and friendly people again. How nice to have a canal view from your home.
There's the water point. They're often a bit hard to spot. The village pub, 4.4 stars on Google reviews. Despite the sign, I could see no evidence of boaters' showers or toilets anywhere. Where the heck are they? I could only see more nice old houses as I headed out of Saxelby. It was almost 1 p.m. and I was hungry, but this was my only food within reach. So, fortified, onwards, ignoring the clouds of doom that gathered menacingly.
I've been going along now for precisely 1 hour, and thanks to those very helpful kilometre markers, I was just about to call them kilometre mile markers, but no, kilometre markers, I know that I've done 5.5 kilometres in that hour. I don't know what the conversion is to miles, but it must be about 3.5, I guess. So I'm going at the right speed. Maybe 3. Yeah, 3. 3 is probably about right, isn't it? I'll do the maths later. Anyway, chugging along, and with that being mile marker 8, kilometre marker 8, the Torksey Lock is about half a kilometre, in fact, from the Trent. So 7.5 to go.
But I was not speeding, oh no, always down to barely moving when passing moored boats. I'm pleased to note my craft leaves barely a ripple in the water that would disturb or rock anyone moored. I swear the engine is still switched on. For some reason on this bit it just wasn't picked up on the camera. Odd, isn't it? Yes, I had sped up very slightly after the moorings, but only to the limit. You see, a tedious stretch lay ahead.
When you ask, what have the Romans ever done for us? Well, one of the things was they built the Fosdyke navigation, which I'm currently travelling along. But the thing about the Romans is they did like to build stuff in very straight lines, and the next 3.5 kilometres of this navigation are just one dead long straight line. It's going to be a bit boring.
So, with the mighty 21 horsepower engine hammering away and sounding like a Citroën 2CV, I pressed on. I told you it was straight, and despite the mid-March sun, the open fields either side gave a different story.
The wind is exceedingly chilly, so I have resorted to my bank robber get-up, which I have to say is very nice.
This is not something I was expecting. Deer ramps protruding 4 metres into the water. What's a deer ramp? Well, between these markers on the shore are loads of underwater rocks, placed such that any deer who fall into the canal have a means of escape. How the deer know they're supposed to make their way to the bit of the canal with the ramp is beyond me, but I presume it must work. Almost 2 hours into the trip and I encountered my first bit of traffic. Quite a surprise to be so quiet on a sunny Sunday, even if it was mid-March. Friendly waves were exchanged. Finally, as I rounded a bend, I knew I was on the home straight, but had I made a crucial error?
2.25 hours of cruising done, and I think I am approaching Torksey. That's just the last bend to go round, and then I'm at Torksey Lock. Now, I was planning to stop here overnight, but I've only just noticed on the map, silly me, that the moorings indicated are on the lower side of the lock, on the river side, not on the above the lock side. I don't particularly want to go out onto the river, so I'm not quite sure whether I will be able to stop or not. I'll find out in a minute.
First impressions were positive, as there were clearly mooring bollards, but it could be private land, who knows? The sign was no help as to whether I could moor there. Look at all this lovely space. Surely some of this must be for me. And then, just what I wanted. They are visitor moorings.
Well, hooray!
But I was also right about there being loads of private moorings here too, lining both sides. That's the lock, the one with the red traffic light. I had no plans to go through it on this journey. I just wanted to get there and see it so that I'd know where I was going when the time came to bring the boat back down to the Midlands. A time that was very much on the near horizon. For now, I just turned around and went back to the public moorings. And look, there's another little sea otter, pretty much the same as mine, I think, although I don't have that nifty windbreak around the back deck. I pulled in and stepped off the boat, hence the wobbling. Bang! Perfect. It was so quiet here, it was wonderful. And there's a friendly little cafe that's not long been open, next to the lock. Nice cake, give them a try if you're passing. I settled down and relaxed for the night.
Good morning. It is Sunday morning. I've had a very good night's sleep. Very peaceful here it is. And there are two things of note. Firstly, even though I stopped motoring at 2 o'clock yesterday afternoon and didn't get up till 9 o'clock this morning, which is, how many hours is that? About 18, 17 hours. The water in the calorifier, which is heated by the engine, remember, so as soon as I switched off, that stopped being heated. It was still plenty warm enough for a shower. I wouldn't say it was hot this morning, but warm enough not to be uncomfortable, and I think that's pretty good going after 17 hours just sitting in a lagged cylinder. And that cylinder in the engine bay, you know, which is out the back, it's not like got any warmth from the cabin keeping it warm, and the temperatures overnight did go down to 0, so I'm very impressed with that. And it's my first boat shower as well, so that was very good. And secondly, I have managed to prise one of the light fittings off so I can get to the bulb. Here is the trim. There's the bit of glass that I was finding was just rotating round in my fingers. That's the brass surround, which just holds in place by luck and hope, it seems, and you have to pry it off. It took me 3 flat knives stuck under the side here and then twisting a bit, and eventually it suddenly sprang off and allowed me to get to the fixture. However, contrary to what a lot of people suggested, this is not spring-mounted. As you can see, it is screwed into the roof. I think because there is so little gap between the wood and the metal outside, the spring-loaded ones wouldn't have the space to work. So this is very much a low-profile thing. So it is screwed in, and then you've got the bulb holder there, and I have now taken the bulb out and can have a look of it. And this is, it seems, an RV fitting, because written in the plastic here, it does say for RV use. Maximum 10 watts. And I should also have mentioned, these are all 12-volt lights. I think a few people in the comments were imagining they were domestic light fittings running on mains voltage, 230 volts. I don't know any narrowboat ever that has its lighting running on mains volts. Nearly everything in narrowboats is either 12 or very occasionally 24 volts. And yes, you do have main sockets, but that's for powering maybe a telly, sometimes a fridge, things like that. And okay, on the modern boats, which are big batteries and everything is switching over to mains, but the standard narrowboat, particularly of this era, 2001, everything is 12 volt. So they are RV sockets for 12 volt lights. The bulb itself... Oh, I was about to say I've lost it, hang on. I've not lost it. Here it is. This is the bulb. It's got no writing on it whatsoever, so it's just a small bulb with, can you even see that one? I'm not sure that's going to focus. 2 prongs and a little traditional element in it. But the fitting has some numbers on it, so I will Google it and see what I can find.
That would be done another day though. For now it was time to retrace my steps and head back to the marina. Goodbye, Torksey. You were lovely. See you again soon. On the return trip, there were 2 boats coming the other way, including this narrowboat. Here's Saxelby once more. The visitor moorings. I slowed right down, but still no sign of any boaters' toilets or showers. And here's that wide beam parked by the pub. It has a for sale note on the wheelhouse if you fancy a purchase. Back to the marina, 2.5 hours each way. The engine and boat behaved impeccably, so I'm as confident as I can be that Narrowboat Gentian is ready to start the trip down south. Thanks for watching. Cheerio.